Hello, and welcome to our collection. Are you seeking a video that will captivate and inspire you? Look no further, because we're delighted to present to you a collection of tales from this week covering a wide range of themes. Enjoy the next few minutes as we take you on a fun adventure. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our latest stuff. Story 1. Former college employee here. It's worse than that. I mean, even ignoring the fact that they're taking tuition money from students who don't understand how loans work most of the time, many freshmen are lacking basic skills necessary for college success, such as study skills, critical thinking and analysis, and even formal writing skills, which should be an easy fix since most higher ed institutions offer tutoring and professors offer office hours, right? Wrong. Funding is getting cut, which limits programs like tutoring. More and more colleges are opting to hire adjunct professors, who often teach at multiple colleges in order to pay their bills. So they have further limited office hours, since they're literally driving across town to teach somewhere else after they finish teaching. Add on top of that the issue of having employees with limited training and often little knowledge of transfer pathways and existing articulation agreements with other schools asked to advise students on which classes to take, and you end up with students who are hemorrhaging loan money because they're failing classes they have to retake, taking classes they don't even need due to poor advising, or because they don't have the support needed in order to be successful. It's maddening, immoral, and awful. How does this happen, though? Why do universities hire so many admins, and why do they not do anything to cut them while there are budget cuts? I know they want to make more money, and an easy way to do that is to cut useless costs. I know it's a huge problem, but I don't understand the mechanism behind it. Because the system is run by administrators. They see the importance of administration and not the importance of good teaching and research. Yep, same reason Congress never makes any new restrictions on their own power. We've investigated ourselves and determined there were no problems or conflicts of interest. In fact, the investigation uncovered we're actually due for another raise. My alma mater fired some 50 professors at the start of the pandemic, despite having a 60% to 40% ratio of administrators to teachers. A year later, they'd burned $50,000 on a series of tacky posters that everyone on campus hated. Administrative bloat is ruining universities. Good programs canceled so we could have a third vice president of diversity and inclusion. Just utterly unreal. For what it's worth, at the college I work at, about half of the tenured professors in my department, I'm adjunct, jumped ship as soon as the pandemic hit. I initially thought it was because they were giving way to allow us younger teachers to keep their jobs/classes in case budget cuts or classes got cut. Then someone pointed out to me that your retirement is partially calculated based on the pay the last 5 years or so they worked. They were worried we'd see furloughs or class loads getting cut in half, so they jumped ship in order to not have a huge hole in their retirement calculations. I mean, I get it, but also, frack our administration. The bloat is real. We built a brand new building on campus, and half the office space went to new administration instead of just faculty, because they've already filled up all the other office space. I don't think anyone is altruistic enough in a pandemic to quit their jobs to allow the next generation to move up. The president of the university I work for makes over $500,000 a year, plus bonuses. Anytime we've hosted an event he's supposed to show up to, we get a last-minute email from his assistant saying something came up and he can't make it. This university also refuses to pay staff and graduate students more because they claim it's impossible due to the budget not being high enough. It's wild how common this is, too. I'm willing to bet anyone who works for a university reads this as thinking, do they work at the same university as me? It's fracking ludicrous. How do we let that happen? I've worked for 2 universities previously and work for a third now, and you are absolutely correct. This could be said about any of them. We don't have the budget to give 50 people making under $35,000 a year a 3% raise. but we do have enough in the budget to give 5 people making $200,000 plus a 3% raise. Crazy how that works out. It's too bad that I thought that only companies that had to deal with investors dealt with this kind of stuff. But how are these people, forget the money that they're making as their standard salary, how are they making bonuses if they're making all these bad decisions and kids aren't getting the education they need? Is there going to be a reckoning for all of this? Or are we just going to suffer the consequences of badly educated people? Story 2. Hospital CEOs, and actually almost all hospital upper management. There are so many layers of management that many of them barely step foot into a healthcare facility ever, let alone ever speak to a patient. Yet all of them make 6, 7, 8-figure salaries plus mega bonuses. My hospital network CEO makes $11 million salary, not including bonuses, which bothers me, but bothers me more are all the board members and SMEG directly under him making nearly as much. It's hundreds of millions of wasted money paid to the people trying to bilk staff out of good pay and bilking patients into paying big bills. I also work for a healthcare organization, and our CEO also makes $11 million annually. One of many, as you said. In December, we had a meeting about the financial results, and leadership discussed how the healthcare industry is in trouble, how our salaries and wages are our biggest problem. This devolved into a tangent of essentially nobody wants to work and we can't keep nurses on staff. I wonder why. Therefore, we're relying on costly temp help, and it's really doing us in. Listening to some C-suite finance skinsuit who makes a 7-figure salary, edit to add, this was not the CEO. I'm aware 11 million is 8 figures. Explain to us that greedy nurses are totally the problem and we'll have to look hard at our expenses this year. AKA probably more layoffs. It was a sickening experience I just haven't been able to shake. I'm a physician, currently in residency. The CEO of our huge hospital system was doing his rounds in the pre-op area in his little suit saying hi to people. He picks up a surgical marking pen and says, "What's this for?" What a crock of smeg. Also a resident. We haven't had a working fridge in the resident lounge for 4+ months. Escalated it to the CEO, who replied that fridges are difficult to come by and on back order for another several months. People working 26-hour shifts have nowhere to put their food. I was working at an urgent care clinic. During the Christmas season one year, I dropped by the nearest department store and bought a discount drip coffee maker to replace the toxic dog smeg one on the counter. Smuggled it into an upper cabinet. Local doc had done the same the previous year with a microwave that had broken. It was the easiest way to deal with the stingy biomed department when they dragged their feet on kitchen appliances. Anyway, several months later, it disappeared, replaced by a more expensive-looking multifunction model that was broken within a year. Sadly, I wasn't able to locate my discount model, sadly. Glad I was bringing my own at that point. I wonder if in their world where Tylenol is like $600 a pill, a working fridge would have to be, what, $10 million? Holy hell, that's painful to witness. I once had a director of radiology tell me we could get 60 MRIs done a day because it only takes 2 or 3 minutes. I wanted to slit my wrists immediately after that. The issue is that they believe and they build plans and external expectations on that crock of smeg, and it puts unreasonable pressure on the department. People outside of medicine have no idea how anything works, and they will 100% believe anyone that they think has more knowledge than them. A cooperative, non-hesitant adult knee MRI can take 20 minutes. Even a CT process is 10 minutes. A bit of a tangent, but see Elizabeth Holmes versus Investors. Any hematologist or biostatistician could have told you that it's statistically improbable to quantify disease from a drop of blood. But she sounded smart and was charismatic and so the money flowed. I was trying to remember that, the Theranos thing. Didn't she get sentenced? I'm trying to remember that. And also, we're seeing a thread compared with the first story. It just seems like the people in the CEOs and the upper management positions are the ones that definitely seem to be overpaid, while everyone else is suffering all these consequences. Story 3. One night, I babysat 3 kids for about 2 hours or so. The kids went to bed when I got there, and the parents had left dinner out for me. So all I did was eat their food and watch their TV and pet their dogs. When they got home, the mom paid me $100. I told her that was way too much. She slurred, "Don't worry about it. I'm drunk." And then I noticed her fly was down. So that was the most overpaid job ever. One of the smartest moves you can make as a parent is treat those who take care of your children incredibly well. I always overpay my sitters. They're worth every penny with the peace of mind they give me. So what I'm hearing is, pay teachers better. You're not being paid for the night everything goes well. You're being paid for the nightmare night. 100%. Have paid a well-qualified babysitter to basically sit on our couch chilling while a 1-year-old slept, knowing if everything went awry, there was a trusted person there. To you, it's overpay. To them, it's a chance to get the frack away from their kids and have spicy time. It's marriage insurance. Trust me, for a break away from the kids and not having to think about them, it was definitely worth it to the parents. I used to get paid twice. Parents would pay me before they went out because they knew they would come home drunk and didn't want to forget. But when they would come back, indeed drunk, and insist they pay me again. That reminds me of one time my friend was talking to this one girl, but he still lived with his parents, but he told her that he lived together. I think that's wrong. He texted me and said something like, "Hey, can I borrow a room in your house for like 2 hours? This girl wants to hang out, and I told her we live together." I said, "Yeah, sure, I don't care." So I set up one of the rooms I wasn't using with some cheap little futon I had in the garage, threw a TV on a foldable table, and left to go play Pokemon Go at a park. He texted me after a couple of hours and said, "Hey, thanks. I left some money on that table, and when she left, I put those sheets in the washer and put the futon back in the garage." He left $80 on the table, he got laid, and did a part of my laundry. Easiest money I've ever made. This one looks to be the outlier. What sounds like it's being overpaid sounds like it's very valuable service. Something that the parents value a lot, and I think if the people that are doing the service don't feel like they're getting overpaid, I don't think that counts. I think the people that are paying really believe the worth of what they're paying for what they're getting. Some free time away from the kids and some peace of mind. Story 1. Dr. Zayas from Planet of the Apes. The entire original series does a really good job, in my opinion, making the villains right, but also the harbingers of their own downfall. But Dr. Zayas is my personal favorite. Dr. Zayas in Beneath the Planet of the Apes has this line which sums up his ideology to a T, paraphrasing as it's been a hot minute. "Help you? Why should I help you? Man is evil, capable of nothing but destruction." And the best part is, while, yes, by refusing to help George, he leads to the world being destroyed, he wasn't even wrong. He wasn't ever wrong. The end of the first movie has George learn that mankind caused a nuclear apocalypse whilst he was out in outer space, leaving the other apes to evolve in a more or less a wasteland. And the second movie ends with George activating nukes underground in a last-ditch Hail Mary and blowing Earth up. While yes, it could have been avoided if Zayas just helped George, why should he have? Everything from both the apes' religious beliefs and their knowledge of history shows mankind to be an evil, destructive species. And while yes, we're also doing good, let's be honest, it's always been our destructive efforts that have led to more lasting impacts on the world. And the last thing Dr. Zayas experienced was just confirmation of his belief as a human, destroying not only himself, not only Dr. Zayas, but literally the entire planet. I don't know if any of you know, but this was also written, the first movie at least I know of, that was written by Rod Serling, who created The Twilight Zone. He was very much known for those kind of like dark and deep kind of stories that bordered on sci-fi. They're very good. Story 2. Anthony Dresden from The Expanse. Season 1 and 2, Book 1 spoilers below. About 300 years in the future, a science team discovers on Phoebe, a moon of Saturn that orbits in retrograde, the first evidence of extraterrestrial intelligent life in the form of a dormant compound that must consume biomass to grow and develop into something. They keep it under wraps and quietly study it. All the evidence points to Earth being this compound's target, and we just got lucky over 1 billion years ago that Saturn's gravity, well, managed to capture Phoebe on its way to Earth. It must have been a weapon. What if whoever sent it comes back to finish the job? The only way to prepare and protect humanity is to understand this thing. It needs to be fed complex life in a controlled setting that could be sterilized and terminated before things get out of hand. So Dresden, with the backing of a powerful technology company, decides to turn the colonized asteroid Eros into this petri dish. Eros just happens to be inhabited by over 100,000 humans who have no say in the matter. But what's 100,000 people compared to the 40+ billion of humanity across the solar system? Genghis Khan killed thousands times more in his time. As a percentage of the human population unalived from his era, Eros would be a rounding error by comparison. Dresden gets caught after the Eros experiment is uncovered, and some vigilantes find his observation outpost to confront him. They expect to find a murderous psychopath, except by the time he finishes explaining his reasoning for the experiment, to some of them he starts making sense. Just watch the show and thank me later. Ooh, I hate that this was spoiled. I'm actually in the middle of watching at least the first series of The Expanse. Been wanting to watch it for quite a while, so see, here's some of the hazards of voicing channels like this. Story 3. Screenslaver from The Incredibles 2. The monologue given during that movie regularly rings in my head. I'm sure the creepy bass robotic voice doesn't help either. The screenslaver interrupts this program for an important announcement. Don't bother watching the rest. Elastigirl doesn't save the day. She only postpones her defeat. And while she postpones her defeat, you eat chips and watch her invert problems that you're too lazy to deal with. Superheroes are part of a brainless desire to replace true experience with simulation. You don't talk, you watch TV shows, you watch talk shows. You don't play games, you watch game shows. Travel, relationships, risk. Every meaningful experience must be packaged and delivered to you to watch at a distance so that you can remain ever sheltered, ever passive, ever ravenous consumers who can't free themselves to rise from their couches to break a sweat, never anticipate new life. You want superheroes to protect you and make yourselves ever more powerless in the process. Well, you tell yourselves you're being looked after, that you're inches from being served and your rights are being upheld, so that the system can keep stealing from you, smiling at you all the while. Go ahead. Send your supers to stop me. Grab your snacks, watch your screens, and see what happens. You are no longer in control. I am. Too long didn't read? You think everything will be okay, and while you remain distracted, the powers that be will continue to steal from you. There is some truth to that, but my issue with that was always the name Screenslaver. This was supposed to take place in like the 50s, I think late 50s, early 60s. This was before computers, and this was before the idea of having a screensaver active to keep your screen from going dead was a thing. I always thought the name Screenslaver, who was going to get that in the 50s and 60s? Nobody. We, as the audience, might get it. Even some people might get it. but not everybody. Story 4. The Reapers from Mass Effect in the original BioWare ending before EA changed it. All they were trying to do was stop advanced races from using so much dark matter that they wiped out all life in the galaxy before other races were allowed to come along. If it wasn't for them, humanity wouldn't just not exist, but every species in the entire cycle, every species in every cycle, everyone would have passed away as the stars went out. This horrific, fast, heat-unaliving event over the course of a few thousand years. Except a small group of Leviathans, in the early days of the universe, realized what was going to happen and sacrificed their entire civilization to save all future life in the galaxy. And when Shepard destroys their ships in the third one, every one of those ships is a museum, a living record of every previous civilization, and they're destroying the only thing that was able to be left from them. To fight the Reapers is to fight against everyone who has ever lived and everyone who ever will live. The Reapers don't just have a point. They've saved more lives than we can even fathom. Their only flaw is that they were never able to find a solution that was better than wiping out civilization every few thousand years and preserving what they could find. Story 5. Otto from WALL-E. It was one of the only almost perfectly executed AI villains. He never really talks unless needed because he wasn't programmed to. No malicious motives, does everything efficiently. He's only bad because he follows his programming, protects the humans, and doesn't let them back to Earth. Not out of malicious intent, but it was what he was programmed to do. And his directive isn't even incorrect. WALL-E finding that plant was like finding a 4-leaf clover in a field of grain. The planet was nowhere near habitable, and they barely know how to stand when they get back. In reality, you know nobody on that axiom is going to make it very far. Edit. Some of you missed the main point of the original post and stated arguments on how humans could survive. Remember, me thinking they wouldn't make it far alone is only any theory. And I'm not saying it's 100% truth, but I'm kind of tired and I keep getting people saying the same thing, so I thought I would just say that so I could go to sleep and hopefully have a couple people less ticked off when I wake up than I would have had I not said that. Story 6. For all my theater nerds. Besides AIDS, Benny was the villain of the musical Rent. But was he the villain? He's a great character for sure, but I don't think he's such a mongrel. He rents out a massive apartment in New York City to his friends who have no income or credit, probably, offers them to invest in a studio to make films and write songs, pays for rehab for Mimi, and pays for the funeral for someone who literally unalived his dog. Sounds to me like a man trying to help his friends get their act together and grow up. I'll admit he's a bit of a tool for cheating on his wife, gentrification, and saying some not-so-great things to Mimi, but the villain? No way. What's really scary about it is that Benny wins, so to speak. New York is pretty much exactly what he wanted and planned. That's one of the things I regret from living on the West Coast and not the East Coast. It's not very easy to see Broadway plays out on this side of things, at least with the original cast. Only one time when I was in Vegas, I saw Spam-A-Lot, and that was when Las Vegas started experimenting with bringing over the original cast of Broadway plays here. And even then, they cut the shows down to a different runtime. Story 1. Captain Bligh. His mistake was being too soft rather than too harsh. He let his crew slack off while they were waiting to make sure the breadfruit trees would survive transplantation, and they mutinied when he put them back to work. It should also be mentioned that when some of his crew mutinied, so many of them wanted to be allowed to leave with him on the ship's tiny open launch that even fully laden, they would not all be able to go and had to draw lots to see who had to stay on the bounty. Captain Bligh then had to sail the tiny, overcrowded, poorly provisioned boat 6,700 kilometers to Timor using dead reckoning. He did not lose a single man. Absolute hero. It should also be mentioned that the mutineers were deeply evil people who basically kidnapped Tahitian women as physical intimacy slaves. When another ship finally came in the vicinity of Pitcairn, it appeared that most of them had expired either from drunkenly unaliving each other or from alcoholism itself. Bligh was an excellent sailor and probably rather lenient by the standards of his time, though still an officer punishing with lashes people who weren't necessarily volunteers, but at least he wasn't a drunken lout and physical intimacy predator like Fletcher Christian and his ilk. Hollywood, no surprise, loves to create absurd fiction. Bligh was an astonishing sailor and a man who refused to tolerate corruption. He should be regarded as a hero, as you say. He gained a reputation for not taking any hogwash from corporate corrupt traders in the colonies, and risked his life by confronting officers who were basically using their military credentials to profit from trade. For the latter, he again faced a mutiny. There's plenty of evidence that, contrary to the behavior of rich fraudsters in the colonies, he was deeply admired by those who arrived in Australia without the power and influence of those who ran the place like a private members' club. At some point, a decent film needs to be made about the guy because the public perception of him is complete smeg. I went to the Hollywood interpretation myself. I keep thinking of like Mutiny on the Bounty. I had a little trouble realizing that this was actually a real person. And I don't know that much about it as far as even the movie. I'll have to read into this further. Story 2. A lot of Tudor women come to mind. Catherine Howard, Mary Tudor, and Anne Boleyn. Catherine was intimately abused her entire life only for Thomas Culpeper to use it to blackmail and assault her. Almost every man in her life abused or used her, and she passed away a teenage girl. After her expiration, people made up hogwash about her wanting to be married to a physical violator and blackmailer. She was a child. Mary Tudor was horrifically abused by her own father, torn from her mother, and prevented from seeing her even as she was perishing, and went on to be demonized way more heavily than her father, who was a tyrant. Mary tried her best with what she had. After her father divorced her mother, she lived with the constant threat of assassination or execution. Her own father was willing to unalive her. Anne Boleyn was not a seductress who tried to steal the king. She did not want the king and initially flirted with him to get back at a guy who courted and ditched her. She only agreed to marry Henry because she had to. Even before he met Anne, he was looking for a way to end his marriage to Catalina, Catherine d'Aragon. Why? Because the only reason they were Marie, I think that's married, was to preserve an alliance with Spain, and that fell through, and she didn't have a son. None of which was Catalina's fault, nor was Anne's. Anne Boleyn never wore yellow during the time of mourning for Catalina. Anne didn't abuse Mary. Henry did. The only reason why Catherine survived her marriage was because her nephew was the ruler of Spain, Austria, and the Holy Roman Empire. It's also why his other wives came from much, much weaker families. Catherine Howard and Lady Jane Grey were little girls slaughtered by the aristocracy out of flimsy principle. As my father-in-law once said, the first affair is the hardest. After that, it all gets easier. The nobles knew. Once Anne was in, the next plan was, who can we get in there from our family? Weak, despicable scoundrel Henry. Again, we're going deep into the history here. I thought it was going to be more of a pop culture thing. Maybe we'll see more of those in those stories. But yeah, Anne Boleyn, I forget what the more recent thing. I think it was The Tudors, that web series that really portrayed Anne Boleyn as very much a schemer. Story 4. In Braveheart, William Wallace gets betrayed by Robert the Bruce, which never happened. He was loyal to the end. That movie made me so angry. I grew up on it and loved it for what I assumed was a historically accurate portrayal. Not only is the movie absurdly inaccurate, the real history is arguably more interesting than the movie. There was no need for artistic restructuring. They could have just dramatized the actual events and it would have been a great movie. My favorite detail about Braveheart is the Battle of Stirling Brigade, where William Wallace famously used a bridge to negate the English numerical advantage. Think 300 and the Hot Gates. So, of course, the movie showed the battle on a giant empty field with nary a bridge in sight. It's a toss-up between this and the fact that Braveheart wasn't even Wallace's title that takes the cake for extremely stupid Hollywood biopic inaccuracies. Even as a 12-year-old obsessed with this movie at the time, the bridge thing really irked me. The movie's inaccuracies overall didn't bug me because the movie starts out with a Scottish narrator basically saying, "Yeah, everyone else is gonna call me a liar, but here's my version of the story." So I saw the movie as basically the biased and mythologized and exaggerated bragging around a campfire version of William Wallace. Breathe. That said, even the tall-tale hogwash version of the Battle of Stirling Bridge could have put an actual fracking bridge somewhere in the scene. According to one of the crew, the director said the bridge got in the way, to which a Scot responded that the English thought so too. I think that's very true. That's very interesting that they even called that out in a movie. There was one point where he was inspiring some troops, and people were saying, "Nah, that's not William Wallace. He's this, he's that." And he came along saying, "Yeah, I've heard he's this tall and he can shoot fire bolts out of his butt." And so, yeah, it's sort of like calling it out, but they actually did it. Very interesting. Story 5. Captain Hazelwood of the Exxon Valdez. He's often pictured on the helm of the Exxon swaying drunkenly, going full throttle into the reef, talking like a pirate. What actually happened? Valdez's critical navigation equipment was out of commission, faxes sent to Exxon, and Exxon told them to sail instead. Coast Guard budget cuts removed vessel tracking in the area. Green and tired crew was on duty, and a request was made to the relief crew. It was denied. Exo, who was on con at the time, was inexperienced on the passage, and neither requested pilotage. While Hazelwood did drink that day, he was not in command of the con at the time and was in his quarters resting. Hazelwood made a comment that he needed a drink because of how upset he was over the situation. Exxon's PR paid off the media to blame Hazelwood. However, Hazelwood was charged with only one charge, which was for pollution. He proved he was not a drunkard and retained his captain's license, even getting offers to sail again, which he turned down. The real villains are mass media, false news, and comedians, but Exxon's PR's spending power to keep the blame off them. Hazelwood passed away last year after the anniversary of the spill. Random fact that Valdez sailed until 2008 under the different name Oriental Nicety. Very interesting read. Between this and the McDonald's coffee lady, I'm noticing a pattern. If you get a chance, check out a podcast called You're Wrong About. Story 1. That life is fair. Ooh, we're starting out this video pretty dark. Dark enough to where we need to add some cream and sugar or something. Ugh. Little too bitter for my taste. Let's see if we can lighten up. Story 2. There are dumber ones out there, but the one I, as an estate lawyer, deal with constantly is the idea that there needs to be a reading of the will where the family all gather and the lawyer reads it aloud to them for the first time. We don't do that. We just mail everyone their own copy if they want it. It's a really stubbornly persistent one because people continue to see scenes of it in movies and TV shows where it's used for some big dramatic reveal. I've even had irate beneficiaries insist that the administration of the estate can't be official until there's a reading. Way back, like 150 years ago or so, I believe we used to do something like that at times because you couldn't exactly presume literacy on the part of the beneficiaries. But now we feel it's a pretty safe bet that you can either read it or find someone who can. Oh, but if we didn't have a reading of the will, we probably wouldn't have one of my favorite comedy skits of all time, Boot to the Head by the Frantics, the Canadian troupe. Look it up and listen to it. Hilarious. Story 3. The moon landing was fake, ignoring that there were 6 moon landings. There is no way Russia or China wouldn't call them out. Russia had launched the Sputnik and had the first human in space. They had the means to track the moon landers. Both China and Russia can now get satellite maps of the moon. They can see the lander on the surface. No way either of them wouldn't miss the chance to humiliate the U.S. The level of ignorance about the Apollo program among deniers is astonishing. Most of them have no idea what it even is they're denying. There was a guy on here a while back who said it was impossible that NASA could get everything right the first time without anyone perishing. I pointed out that the mission that landed was Apollo 11, and that the ghosts of Chaffee, Grissom, and White should kick his butt. Yeah, I don't get this one either. There's been plenty of people that debunked how we did not have the technology to fake the moon landing at the time, even if you got someone like Stanley Kubrick doing it. And I don't know, with all the fake news that will happen and all the sabotage happening, I don't know, maybe Russia or China might do a Hail Mary and try to do an official denying to try and get Americans here riled up. Story 4. It's believed in Indian culture that keeping your unibrow means good luck. I kept my unibrow for 20 years thinking it's my good luck until I got stage 5 of kidney failure, and I did my eyebrows after that because who gives a frack about luck anymore? Now my eyebrows look cute AF. Indian culture, and I think most old cultures, to be honest, have this thing where they take something that's usually seen as a negative in society and try to spin it as a good luck or fortune thing to make everyone accept it. Like massive foreheads mean intelligence? I can't think of others now, but there were plenty. I guess back in the day it helped those that would otherwise be ostracized or bullied get accepted. Story 5. Not sure if this fits here exactly, but the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit being a frivolous case filed by a money-hungry customer. That poor lady was a real victim who suffered legitimate injuries who only wanted her medical costs covered. I would never call that a myth. I'd call it a hatchet job, conspiracy, plot, media manipulation, character assassination, whatever you want. But you're correct, that poor lady was done so dirty by McDonald's after the lawsuit. And if I recall correctly, she wasn't even looking for a payout. She just wanted the resulting medical bills to be paid for. Correct. She didn't even want to sue. She just wanted them to pay for her medical bills. Story 6. Detox drinks. Used to work somewhere that sold juice cleanses. 1. Your body does not need something to cleanse its liver and kidneys like that. Your liver and kidneys are the cleansers. If anything, you're just giving them a break by laying off alcohol and cheeseburgers. 2. You only feel better because for a couple days you're actually getting some vitamins into your system for once and aren't eating steaming piles of smeg at every meal. It's not the presence of the juice, it's the absence of the other smeg. 3. The fruit juices portion are just sugary and tasty. Of course they feel good. That reminds me of the class I had to take to become a security guard in Vegas, and one of the things they told you is that when they sit someone down that's really drunk and get coffee in them, that's just a ruse. It's just to get them sat down and have something in their hands. Coffee does not cure being drunk. The only thing that cures being drunk is time. Story 7. Some people get the idea that all autistic people are complete and utter buffoons, and it makes me mad when people find out I'm autistic and suddenly talk down to me, even if we've had a lengthy conversation. It makes me even more mad when people think that I can't think for myself, so they stand over me and treat me like a baby. No, Tron Nerd 82, don't handle those scissors. Scissors are for normal people. Then, when I prove to them that I'm not a complete vegetable, they either act like I'm just being a grumpy baby, or they question my autism. And this is why I just keep to myself regarding my autism, unless I feel like I can tell someone. Yes, I was actually shocked when about 20 years ago I started reading some interesting posts from autistic people, mostly severely criticizing the types of education and therapy they were being subject to, ripping the so-called experts, and especially the organization called Autism Speaks. I quickly understood that autistics don't need a bunch of non-autistic people speaking for them. They were very capable of speaking for themselves. I felt a little bit of a kinship being diabetic and having no trust in the diabetics organizations or many of their recommendations. Story 8. That humans only use 10% of their brains. This is false, regardless of how those who proclaim this myth seemingly demonstrate that it is in fact true. I had a health teacher in school who told us once it's probably okay to actually drink during pregnancy because chances are the brain damage will happen to the 90% of the brain humans don't use, so it won't have any effect on the baby. He proved this by talking about some woman he knew who drank during pregnancy, and one of her sons is a student in the gifted program, and the other one is an idiot. The gifted student got lucky and got brain damage to the unused 90%. Just what the hell? Story 9. That shaving makes your hair grow back thicker. My 37-year-old partner still believes this, and it does my nut in. My mom laid this on me thick when I started asking her if I could shave my legs. She made me think that once you shave, you can't go back to not shaving or you'll turn into Sasquatch. This was the 90s with information readily available. What the hell made her think that is beyond me. Joke's on you, Mom. I don't shave from November to April every year, and my leg hair is the least weird thing about me, thank you. I'm trying to think of who would benefit from spreading a story, the untruth that hair grows back thicker if you shave it. Was it some kind of big backlash against Big Razor or something? I don't know. What do you think? I'll have to look it up later. Story 10. A lot of doctors and scientists are on the spectrum, so technically, autism causes vaccines, and vaccines cause adults. I particularly love that the people who still believe that vaccines cause autism use the argument that it's scientifically proven. Yet they will not believe all the research that came after this to show that this absolutely isn't the case, or the fact that the authors were actually found guilty of deliberate fraud and it was proved they falsified results to make money. The person who started that myth actually created their own vaccine. The problem was it was for one illness, and there was a competing vaccine that covered 3, including that specific illness, making his irrelevant, so the autism thing was a smear campaign to get it pulled so his could sell. Then, pushing that agenda became lucrative with the dipsmegs who believed it, and the fracker just ran with it. H-Bomber Guy on YouTube has a really good video on it. It's a weird, messed up rabbit hole. Story 11. Snakes will size you up before eating you. Snakes are not that smart, and they don't think out when they eat. If there's an opportunity for food, they'll just go for it. There aren't very many snakes who would try to eat an adult human. Size matters. And yeah, I know that there are a couple of large species that would. Just saying, most wouldn't. There is an urban legend that anyone doing educational work with snakes or just hanging out in public with a pet snake repeatedly gets told. A person that their friend or family member knows was allowing their friend, insert large species of snake, to sleep in the bed with them. It would stretch alongside their body at night. Then, a vet, herpetologist, or zookeeper told them not to do this, as laying alongside them indicated that the snake was sizing them up to eat them. It never happens. Snakes don't literally measure prey with their bodies, and it's a dumb premise. People also like to confess to reptile keepers with an animal in public view about the snakes they've unalived and why they felt it was necessary. People are weird. Story 1. Oatmeal. Either you find me heartwarming, but not gastronomical or disgusting. One question. Are you plain or flavored? If so, what flavor? Oh, I'm heavily flavored. I'd say cinnamon, cardamom, maple, with some slices of banana and blueberries on the side. Add some sprinkled roasted peanuts on that. If you're still single, then there's no hope for anyone else. I'm not. I'm married to a very yummy giant fudge cookie. Well, you know what they say. Once you go fudge, you never budge. That's so stupid. Oh, man, that just reminds me of Sesame Street with Bert, Ernie and Bert. Bert's favorite food was oatmeal, but he always liked plain oatmeal, so. But then the whole idea about his relationship status has always been in question. Story 2. Invisible. Neither pretty enough nor ugly enough to invite notice. Yep, best way I would describe myself as well. I'd make a great spy, as people who've already met me keep introducing themselves to me again and again. Aesthetically, I'm so unmemorable. I always say God must want me to rob a bank because everyone always forgets my face. Actually, that's very true. Everything like all the spy movies, 007, all of those other ones, those aren't the spies. Anybody that is nondescript, that people don't recognize, those are the spies, the ones that you don't notice. Story 3. Older women want me to meet their daughters. The daughters don't want to meet me. Just date the moms. Problem solved. Edit. Had to look up Young Gravy. I'm getting old. If I could talk to the mothers and have intimacy with the daughters, then I'd really have something going. George Costanza. Isn't there a whole category on the spicy sites that deals with that kind of arrangement? Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I wouldn't know those things. I have church to go to later. Story 4. Like an in Walmart, but like nah in Target. In Walmart, people wonder why I'm not shopping at Target. In Target, people wonder why I'm not shopping at Walmart. I couldn't think of a way to sum it up, so thanks for the help. Story 5. In terms of sports cars, I'm a bicycle with a playing card attached to the frame to make it sound cool. Story 6. I caught myself naked in the mirror once and felt obligated to apologize to myself. Did you accept the apology? Tried to, couldn't unsee it. Well, then the solution's simple. Don't go out socializing naked or go on dates naked. That might help you out. Just a little clue you might want to consider. Story 7. Long ago, went on my first car date. The date's mother answered the door and invited me in. She went to the stairs and called up to her daughter. Better than nothing is here. Fracking brutal. Story 8. I would have been hot in the 1800s. Look kind of weird now. Show us your ankles, you sloot. Sloot? I like that word replacement. I might use that from now on. Story 9. Attractive enough to get my wife. Not attractive enough for people to believe we're together. Hey, if you've got people that aren't believing you when you have the proof standing right next to you that you have been able to attract and keep a partner, maybe you need to reevaluate your friendship, or maybe you just need to be aware of their other judgments. Story 10. Like one of those vegetables they sell cheaper because they look a bit wonky. Story 11. Bob the Builder. Can we fix it? No, Bob. Just sign the divorce papers. Story 12. My milkshake is only sufficient to bring an ostrich to the yard. Okay, is this person saying they only have a pet ostrich? I don't know. If someone has a pet ostrich, in a way they're at least somewhat interesting. Attractive? I don't know, but interesting. I'd talk to him. Story 13. I'm a tree in a forest. In the right lighting, I have beautiful foliage. Ah, yes. And if I skip the makeup and throw on a hoodie, I blend in with the scenery. Story 14. My 2-year-old draws me accurately. Story 15. My parents would maybe get 2 chickens and a goat. My mom is a 1-cow wife. My grandfather had an ornery cow that he didn't want to bother with anymore. He told my dad if he could catch it, he could sell it and have all the money from the sale. My dad used that money to buy my mom's engagement ring. Aw. Story 16. Somewhere between Quasimodo and the Phantom of the Opera. Excellent singing voice, though. Story 17. I'm a '98 Corolla with cardboard on my rear passenger side window and several industrial band stickers on the boot. And you'll run just fine for another 15 years. Yeah, reliability is an attractive quality. Story 18. Good enough for government work, but I couldn't survive in the private sector. Story 19. Scared to let my husband sober up. Everlasting beauty comes with a price. Your husband's liver, apparently. Beauty is in the eye of the beer holder. Story 20. Someone once told me that I'm a female Jonah Hill, and I will never recover from that. Ooh. Story 21. I drew eyes on my pet rock, and it still won't look at me. Looks at Rocky. That's okay. Take your time. Story 22. When I walk the streets, I turn more stomachs than heads. I turn heads, just not in my direction. I turn heads, but then their parents tell them it's not polite to stare. Story 23. I've been told I'm pretty for a fat girl. I'm cute for an Asian guy. I'm so pretty I don't even look black, whatever that means. What are you mixed with? Sperm and an egg. Story 24. I frequently use online forums. Story 25. I look like Seth Rogen, but I'm a woman. Edit. Apparently most of us didn't know I misspelled it. And y'all, this is a hill I will die on. I knew I was his female doppelganger since Freaks and Geeks. And also, thanks, but do you have his signature laugh? Like starting a lawnmower. Story 26. Not especially attractive, but not so unattractive that my personality can't make up for it. My mom says I'm handsome. My elderly grandma said I was the most handsome grandson. To be fair, she's hard of seeing, so may have thought I was a different cousin. Story 27. Dogs bark at me for no reason. Story 28. I'm told I have a good personality. Story 29. I am a garbage bag filled with hornets. I'm sure you're a sandwich baggie of bees at worst. Story 30. Enough to get free stuff, but not enough to get free rent. Enough for drunk patrons at the bar to propose to me. Not enough to earn a living as a model. Story 31. My first time at a grocery store deli counter, the guy asked how thick I wanted them, and I said, I don't know. What seems normal? So he held up a test slice, and I asked for thicker. And he asked if I wanted the test slice. So I got a free snack. You must be gargantuously attractive. Story 32. Well, if Margot Robbie is a royal flush and Daisy Ridley is a four of a kind, I'm an unopened pack of reverse Uno cards. Story 33. You know that one really attractive store clerk you see at the local grocery store? I'm the creepy guy staring at her from the soup aisle. Story 34. You know the trope of the main character or girl next door having this amazing glow-up and it turns out they were beautiful all along? Yeah, no amount of glow-up would fix this mess. I learned in the movies that all you need to do is let your hair down and stop wearing big black plastic-rimmed glasses. And put on a low-cut top and tight clothes and heels and some makeup. Boom. Princess. Story 35. Too pretty to complain about my appearance, but not pretty enough to be stuck up about it. Editing to say, too pretty to complain about my appearance without sounding like a butthole who's fishing for compliments. This is the most honest and relatable one I've seen yet. I'll add, plain enough to feel genuinely ugly and unwanted in high school, but cute and confident enough in my 30s that men can't get spicy time just by sliding compliments in the insecurity mailbox. Insecurity mailbox? Story 36. A perfectly toasted grilled cheese sandwich and a steaming bowl of tomato soup by the fire while a snowstorm blows outside. Dang, you got confidence, bro. That's like a 20 out of 10. No numbers, please. You'll scare the original person. Story 37. No one would want to see my face on a screen, but I have an attractiveness when interacting in person. Story 38. Enough that when I undress in front of my husband, his face lights up with pure unbridled joy, but not enough to be bothered or disrespected in the workplace. Story 39. I'm so pale, motion sensor faucets have a difficult time detecting me. Story 40. My wife is hot, and she lets me touch her boobs. Story 1. It's kind of a long one, but a good one. One day, St. Peter was manning his station at the pearly gates of heaven, denying or allowing people to enter heaven. Eventually, a guy comes up and starts talking to Peter, and Peter says, "Tell me about the day you died." The guy says, "Oh man, it was terrible. I got off work early to try and catch my wife cheating on me, as I expected she was. When I got home to my 14th floor apartment and found my wife naked, wet, and in bed, obviously she had just been having spicy time. So I searched all over my 14th floor apartment and couldn't find anyone. So I decided to have a cigarette on my balcony. Lo and behold, I looked down and saw a naked man hanging by his fingertips, and in a rage, I grabbed a hammer and smashed his fingers. Lucky for him, he landed in some bushes and started to scramble out of them. So I went and pushed my fridge off the edge. It landed on him and slayed him. But the act gave me a heart attack, and I expired." Peter let the man in and asked the next guy, "Tell me about the day you died." The second man said, "Man, it was awful. I was in my 15th floor apartment doing acrobatics. But see, I have a better range of motion if I'm naked when I do my acrobatics. But I misjudged a jump and fell out of my window and off my balcony. Luckily, I caught myself with just my fingertips on the 14th floor apartment balcony. But then some crazy mongrel came out and smashed my fingers with a hammer. I managed to land in some bushes, but as I was trying to get out of the bushes, the mad lad dropped a fridge on me, and I perished." Peter chuckles to himself and allows the man entry. Then Peter turns to the next man and says, "Tell me about the day you died." The third man says, "Okay, so get this. I'm hiding in a fridge." My favorite part of this joke has always been the absurdity of one man casually throwing a fridge out of the window. And this must be a type of heaven where your soul looks different from the way you look in real life. If those two people were standing right next to each other in line, I'm surprised they didn't recognize each other and start an argument right there. I kind of think they could have both told both sides of their story to Peter at the same time if that happened. Story 2. As Mickey and Minnie were before the judge in divorce court, the judge looked at Mickey and said, "Listen here, Mr. Mouse. I cannot grant you a divorce from Minnie." "But why not, Your Honor?" a stunned Mickey asked. "I have reviewed all the information you submitted to the court, and I can find no evidence to support the allegation that she's crazy," explained the judge. "Oh, Your Honor," Mickey explained, "I didn't say she was crazy. I said she was fracking goofy." I know, the censorship kind of ruins the punchline. A few years ago at Disneyland, my kid was taking pictures with Goofy, and I asked if they had heard the one about Minnie and Mickey in divorce court. Goofy immediately started shaking his head and waving his hands, trying to stay in character while also trying to stop me from telling the joke. I could hear laughter from within the costume. I'm guessing they probably heard it on a daily basis. To be sharp enough to get the characters to almost break, but not so edgy that you get escorted out of the park. Didn't think of it then, but in line, but yes, pretty much what I was aiming for. On a related note, a relative of mine was at Disney World, and there was a shop with a sign that read, "We will print anything on a t-shirt." He asked the guy working there, "You'll print anything?" And the clerk, a little uneasy, said, "Well..." My cousin said, "How about, I touched Walt Disney's frozen corpse at Disney World?" Clerk was like, "Yeah, no." Of all the places I wouldn't believe would print anything on a t-shirt, a shop inside Disney World is the one I believe least. I'm really surprised they ran with that marketing line at all. Even "we'll print your message on a t-shirt" would be hedged enough to set expectations. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to always stay in character in those suits. My old OBGYN's daughter used to play Merida from Brave at Disney World. I love hearing people's reference relatives of random people in their life, especially doctors. "Oh yeah, my dermatologist's cousin actually used to work for Robert De Niro, so..." Well, there was a big old thread there after that joke. I have heard that joke before. I think the whole "we'll print everything" message. That would be a feat. You would win some real life points if you could get them to say, "I touched Walt Disney's frozen corpse at Disney World," put on a t-shirt. Story 3. A termite walks into a bar and asks, "Is the bartender here?" That's a good one. I love bar jokes. 2 guys walk into a bar. The third one ducks. A duck walks into a bar and says, "Got any bread?" The barman says, "No, we only have beer." The duck has a beer. A few minutes later, the duck says, "Got any bread?" The barman says, "No, I told you, we only sell beers." "Okay," says the duck. "A beer then, please." The duck drinks a beer. A while later, the duck says, "You got any bread?" The barman sighs with exasperation. "No, we only sell beer. Buy a beer or take off." "Okay," says the duck. "Another beer then, please." He drinks the beer. "Got any bread?" "Listen to you. I've told you we don't have any fracking bread, so stop asking." "But No. If you ask for bread one more time, I'm going to nail your fracking beak to this bar." "Got any nails?" "No." "Can I have some bread then?" Then he waddled away, waddle, until the very next day. 2 chemists walk into a bar. The first says, "I'll have an H2O. The second says, "I will have an H2O too." The second chemist expires. I have to look up what that actually means, what the actual chemical is, but yeah, I've gotten all those jokes. I like the one with the duck. Got any nails, got any bread. Love that one. Story 4. Man goes into a butcher shop. Asks, "What happened to your assistant?" Butcher replies, "Fired him." Man asks, "Why's that?" Butcher replies, "Because he was putting his tool in the bacon slicer." Man asks, "What did you do with the bacon slicer?" Butcher replies, "Fired her as well." Ooh. I heard this as an Ollie and Lena joke. Ollie comes home from work early one day looking real sad, and Lena asks, "Ollie, you're home from work early. You look sad. What happened?" Ollie replies, "Well, I got caught with my thing in a pickle slicer and they fired me." "Oh no," says Lena. "Let me see your thing." So Ollie shows her his thing and everything's fine. "Ollie, your thing is just fine. What happened to the pickle slicer?" Ollie says, "Oh, they fired her too." An old Finnish man I worked with liked to tell this joke. One day, Lena decides to mow the whole lawn herself. When she's done, she's hot and sweaty. Lena, "Oh boy, I think I'll have a beer at the bar." She goes to the bartender and says, "I would like a beer, please." The bartender says, "Okay, Anheuser-Busch?" Lena, taken aback, says, "It's fine. And how's your pecker?" Ollie met a beautiful girl at a bar in Amsterdam, and so he took her back to his place, and they made wild, passionate love. After a solid 45 minutes, he lay next to her, panting, and asked gently, "Are you finished?" She got a very quizzical look on her face and shook her head. He took a big, deep breath and jumped back into action. An hour goes by, and he manages again to finish off and is lying on top of her this time, barely able to move. He whispers to her, "How about now? Are you finished?" She looked frustrated this time, sweating and exhausted as she was, and she shook her head no again. "No, I'm not," she panted in between breaths. So being the good sport that he was, and having had the forethought to take his Viagra at the bar, he was functional and got back to it. After 2 more hours of doing his best, he finally popped one more time and couldn't manage any more and collapsed in a lump on the bed, barely able to breathe. After a few moments, he looked at this gorgeous woman he'd partnered with for the night and said meekly, "Please, tell me you're finished now." The woman rolled her eyes to the side and, in between panting breaths, finally said, "Deity damn it, no, Holly. I'm Swedish." Story 5. What's the difference between an owl, a piano, and a fish? You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. What about the owl? Who? Edit. Wow, this blew up. Lots of folks were quick to reference REO Speedwagon, and the owl part seemed to go over their heads. Same thing happened in a meeting with work colleagues a month back. Love that this got many shares with wives, parents, siblings, and friends. Gotta give props to my brother for this joke. I don't know where he heard it, but it was the best clean joke I heard in years. Thanks for the awards, all. Told this to my girlfriend. She walked right into the joke and walked right out of the room after. Just told it to my daughter. Might be the best joke reaction I've ever gotten. I got a rueful sigh from my 8-year-old before he just shook his head. 10 out of 10 joke. Get him! Deity, damn it.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.